Clarkson misses a three. Lynn tries to save it under his own basket, turns into transition for the Jazz. Millsap left open in the left corner, buries the three. And looks back at the Laker bench, a team that released him from training camp numerous times. And he played for the LA Defenders in the D-League most recently and buries the shot. Jazz back up by three. Rudy overplays the elbow, steals it, pushes ahead to Millsap. Elijah will throw down two.
There's your answer right there, baby.
Thurl Bailey talking a little trash to us all. That was the highlight of last night. The low leg followed for the Jazz with a failure in the fourth quarter. We'll break that down, but we'll look more at NBA big picture stuff. It's all coming up today on a fun edition of Tip Off. How are you, everybody? Glad to have you aboard. Thank you very much. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA Insider. Thanks for tuning in whenever and wherever you may be doing it at whatever day, because that's the modern world of how you can do it. For me, it's a morning. We're having a cup of coffee together. We're talking some hoops, sharing some of the things I do, and breaking down the NBA and the Utah Jazz for you all. The topics today should be fun. I've been working on two projects. One is who are the best drivers in the NBA, and then and using the stats view numbers kind of extrapolated out a little further. And then the other one, wait a second, my wife is on the phone. Hi, honey. I'm recording, so I'm recording my podcast right now, but I thought this might be important. Oh, I didn't mean to. Oh, okay. All right. I didn't mean to. All right. Love you, but they say I called them accidentally. I don't think I did. All right. So anyway, where was I? So one is drives. I've extrapolated out, and the other is a theory that I've promoted a lot on this show. That is that I don't think that team individual player performance changes very much based on their teammates. And so I thought it'd be a good time. We got about 20 games of sample size now of Jeff Green, Dion Waiters, Rajon Rondo, and Josh Smith on their new teams. And I thought it'd be worth going to look and see if any of them are any different than they were before. So I'll screen share all those geeky stat things for you. So it's going to be pretty geeky. And then we'll dig a little bit into the Jazz, and I'll answer your questions as well. We're going to just generally, though, ignore last night. No, we won't. I mean, there's some lessons to be had about last night's performance. But with that said, let's dig in. You can, by the way, follow us on Facebook at Locked On Sports and David Locke, Twitter at Locked On Sports. And the Google Plus community is fabulous. Locked On Sports Google Plus community. Hope you partake in that. And if you get a chance, give us 5 stars on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever app. That's always very helpful. Let's hit the NBA 5.
This is Alec Burks, and you're Locked On Jazz.
All right, I'm going to screen share this right out of the chute today. For you, because I want to, this is kind of, and there's just going to be a lot of data up on the screen, and I don't even know if you'll be able to read it because it's so small, but I want to at least show it to you so that you don't think I'm making up what I'm doing. For those of you listening, I actually think it won't be too bad. For those of you video, you'll actually probably be worse because you'll be scrunching down trying to see if you can possibly see what any of these numbers say here. So let's start off with Rajon Rondo. The premise here, when all these players got traded, was that their performance would not change dramatically based on being with a new team. That my general viewpoint in the NBA, or kind of just overall, is that very, very few players' performance changes based on what team they play on. I think there's a few examples where an individual player is able to go alter their game, but when you take 90% of these players and put them on another team, they perform exactly the same way. Now, if they're with Chris Paul or Kevin Durant, sometimes that one individual star has so much gravity that it changes things. So let's look at Rajon Rondo. Points per possession, Rondo's at .65, which is god-awful, and with Boston this year for the season, at Boston he's .63, and Dallas he's .67. His points per field goal attempt are the exact same. His points per scoring opportunity, which eliminates turnovers, are .84 versus .86, the exact same. His Locke offensive rating is what means he's probably the worst offensive player in the entire league at minus 15 or minus 16. Locke offensive rating league average is about 8.5 to or 10 usually if it's done correctly. And to be negative means you're so far below. So here offensively, Rajon Rondo is virtually the exact same player that he was a year ago or earlier this year with Boston. Almost the exact same player across the board. He's improved ever so insignificantly. Let's look at Dion Waiters. Dion Waiters in Cleveland was 0.82 points per possession. In Oklahoma City, 0.79. He's actually gotten a little worse. His points per field goal attempt has gotten considerably worse, 0.01 to 0.94. His points per scoring opportunity has dropped to 0.06. Otherwise, his lock opportunity. So Dion Waiters has actually gotten slightly less good than he was in Cleveland. Somewhat, I would say, proving the point because the premise there was, when he goes and leaves Cleveland, he'll be a better player because he won't actually. He's heading in the wrong direction his entire career now, in the wrong direction, which is not being talked about probably enough that Oklahoma City just decided to take Dion Waiters instead of Reggie Jackson because they didn't want to pay Reggie Jackson, and Dion Waiters is a far less good player. Josh Smith went from disastrous play in Detroit this year to Houston, and he has gotten considerably better. So this is interesting because it's worth looking at for a second. Now, he's gotten considerably better this year. If you take the 32 games in Detroit, 25 games in Houston, his points per possession in Detroit were 0.72, and they're now 0.82. So he's up a full 0.1. That's an enormous jump. His points per scoring opportunity are up from 0.83 to 0.99. Point per scoring opportunity is a shot or a trip to the free throw line. So those are huge jumps for Josh Smith. But let me kind of quickly, before we can totally say that it's that big, let's go back and suddenly look at Josh Smith in 2011, 12, and 2012, 13, and maybe even a little bit 13, 14 Detroit before he had this incredible outlier, terrible season. And all of a sudden, he looks almost exactly the same. His Locke offensive rating is negative 0.5 versus negative 2. His point per scoring opportunity is 1.0 in when he is 2 years in Atlanta, it's 0.99. It's exactly the same. His points per possession is a 0.88, 0.86, 0.81. It's a 0.82 with Houston. So, yes, Josh Smith has taken a jump from his Detroit performance, but his Detroit performance was such an incredible outlier of bad performance. If you actually look at his previous 3 years' performance, all of a sudden what he's doing this year, it's actually not quite as good, but it's right back in line with it. So I would almost argue that it still falls through. Let's look at Jeff Green, our third sample size. So Jeff Green in Boston averaged 0.98 points per possession. In Memphis, it's 0.96. He's down a little bit. A little surprising. Points per scoring opportunity, 1.08 in Boston, 1.03 in Memphis. So, again, he has slid a tiny bit here in this season. I deleted that line because it just was confusing. But now let's look back at his regular performance. 2 years ago, 0.98, 1.01, 0.96, 0.96, 0.97, 0.95. Wait a sec. Jeff Green's at 0.96. He's right about where his regular career numbers have been. His points per scoring opportunity, though, are down a little bit, 1.03. So he's actually, it's interesting here is that both Jeff Green and Dion Waiters have slid a little bit, switching to teams with a higher expectation, maybe lower usage rate. The other guys have stayed somewhat similar. I still just thought I'd share that. There's I would argue, and I can look at the individual careers some more, but I would argue that looking at these four players, the takeaway is still, I believe in the premise. Maybe somebody as detailed as Pelton, who fundamentally disagrees with this premise, is so detailed and able to separate such minuscule numbers that he can see a difference. But to me, when you look at this, you take a player from one team to another, there's no major change in performance But Rajon Rondo, Dion Waiters, Jeff Green, and Josh Smith all changed teams. The only one who's had a wide divergence from what his performance was early in the year is Josh Smith, but all he did was revert back to his regular Josh Smith. Dion Waiters has gotten a little less good. Jeff Green's got a little less good. Also, interesting, worth some study, do players play better when they switch teams in the middle of the year and try to assimilate? Might be a fair argument that they actually don't. So, we can look at some other players if you want to. If you have any ideas, you want to email me or send me some things. I like doing this. Other players have just switched teams recently. I'd rather here's the example. Okay, there's plenty of outliers to any theory. Anytime you have a theory, it's not 100% guaranteed. There are certainly going to be players who switch teams and get better. There's going to be teams who switch teams and get worse. But on a general principle, I would argue that if a player is efficient, here's the thesis. A player's efficiency with one given team is the same when he switches teams, generally regardless of his teammates. An individual player is as efficient as he is with his own individual use of a possession, regardless of his teammates. And I pretty fundamentally believe this. And when you make a trade and you listen for fans, he'll be better here because that's crap. That is, and if you hear a front office tell you that, that's luring themselves into a belief of that's going to be flawed, very deeply flawed. And so we fell into that, I think, as the Utah Jazz for a while. I think we fell into this where we got so used to the Sloan system making players better, and generally I think made players better because of the fact that they were playing with Stockton and Malone. And so there's the corollary. Every now and then there's a player or two that is so special that they do make everybody around them better. But there's usually only 1, 2, or 3 in the league. They're probably LeBron, Durant, and Chris Paul right now, and that's it. And yet, hey, we just did one where he hasn't played a lot on Oklahoma City team, and it didn't really show. All right, let's move to the next one, which is who are the best drivers in the NBA. This one's really basic. What I've done here is I've just taken the stats view, and stats view is not great. Stats view doesn't show really what it needs to. Stats view gives you field goal percentage on drives, which somehow my formatted cell is all jacked up. It gives you field goal percentage on drives and gives you, points per drives per game and player point per game on drive, but it doesn't do what I like to do with statistics, which is if you're going to have any value to me as a statistic, you have to be down to the individual possession usage. And to me, that's where there is value in numbers here with these numbers, is if you can break down individual players, singular possession usage. Who leads the league in player points per game on drive just tells me who drives the most. It doesn't tell me much more than that. So what I've done is taken the stats view numbers and then, as I do with all of numbers, really tried to break it down to the individual possession use. And now these are the guys who drive the 100 most of any players in the NBA. And what we have here is the players who lead the league. So these are the top 100 drivers. They drive at least 4 times a game. So let's sort the data. And the first is who are the best individual drivers. So in other words, they drive and they score. And this is the best players in the NBA. This is Kevin Durant at 1.02 points per drive. That's pretty incredible. Kevin Durant drives, and whenever he shoots, he scores a point a drive. The next closest is James Johnson in Toronto. Surprising. James Johnson comes out beautifully on this, and he drives a lot at .91. Derrick Rose, third best. DeMarcus Cousins, fourth best. Steph Curry, fifth. LeBron James, sixth. These are the best players in the NBA. Here's some surprises. Rudy Gay up here. Austin Rivers. I missed on Austin Rivers. I really liked him out of college because he could get to the rim and drive, and I thought he'd be able to finish. He is one of the best points per drive guys in the NBA at .77. Interesting to see what's going on there. Klay Thompson, Joe Johnson, Reggie Jackson, just his Oklahoma City numbers, his total numbers are the same there. Russell Westbrook, points per drive are good again. They were bad last year. Here's Gordon Hayward. Pretty impressive company. And Alec Burks, personal points per drive. Worth noting here, just compare Alec Burks. They're both in the same category as James Harden. They don't get fouled as much. But here's the brilliance of James Harden. His team points per drive is 1.34. So Harden goes and drives. When he goes and drives, his points per drive are 0.73, but his team points are 1.34, best in the NBA, I think. I'll look at maybe James, probably best in the NBA. Maybe James Johnson's higher, at 1.4. But that's where Harden is creating for him. Maybe that's why Josh Smith has reverted back a little bit. Hayward better finding someone than Alec Burks at 1.18, and Burks at 1.13. But so there, you find out that Hayward and Burks on their drives to the basket are actually pretty good. This is how the guys who drive the 100 most of any players in the NBA. Let's continue the sort. Here's the bottom. These are the worst drivers in the NBA. Jameer Nelson, personal points per drive, 0.27. Norris Cole, probably why they just traded him. And then Trey Burke is the third worst points per drive guy in the NBA at 0.38. Rajon Rondo's at 0.41. By the way, the whole idea that Rondo's kicking and creating for people, 1.01 points in Dallas, that's not very good. You'll see it's near the bottom of the list. And he was worse before. Here's Dion Waiters. He'll be the worst there is, points per drive in his time in Oklahoma City. But so here are the guys who get the fewest points per drive, who drive with regularity. Who creates the best on their drives? And there you have James Johnson at 1.40, James Harden at 1.34 team points per drive. So this includes his stuff as well. Steph Curry, Drew Holiday, might be why that injury is hurting them so much. Kevin Durant, Derrick Rose, Damian Lillard, Jimmy Butler. Impressive to see a wing player in there. John Wall, Kyle Lowry, Corey Joseph, nice player doesn't finish great, but sure distributes. Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, and Chris Paul, and Dwayne Wade. So these are the guys that are the best at team points per drive. Notice they drive, either score themselves or give it off to somebody else in the NBA. Gordon and Alec and the Jazz guys slip. Here's Gordon at 1.18. So he's probably top 25 in that area. Maybe arguably better team would improve the number. Alex slips a little bit. And down to the bottom, Dion Waiters, the most selfish, worst driver in the NBA since going to Oklahoma City at 0.73. Ramon Sessions, nobody can figure out why he's not doing very well right now for his new team. Maybe that's why he's the second worst in the NBA. Or for an entire season, he's actually the worst in the NBA. Patrick Beverley, team points per drive, very low, which is why James Harden has the ball. Tobias Harris, Rondo, and Boston. Michael Carter-Williams in here. It'll be interesting to see if this changes at all when he goes to Milwaukee. He's the ultimate test to the idea that your teammates don't have an impact on what you do, because he's played with D-leaguers. And so now will he improve? Here's Waiters again. Wilson Chandler, Trey Burke pops back in at 1.05, and we'll move on. Brandon Knight, not particularly good either at 1.07, and not particularly good finisher, which might be one of the reasons they didn't want to pay him. Dennis Schroeder trying to develop. So the young guards are on the bottom of this list. All right, those are the kind of two research projects I've been working on recently. Thought I'd share them with you. Let's dig into the Utah Jazz and their performance last night.
Hi, this is Trevor Booker. I want to hear from you. Call 801-200-3738 and ask me a question. That is 801-200-3738 to ask me a question.
So the beauty of that last 15 minutes is, like, I was pumped and excited to do that. That's what a geek I am. Like, I wanted to share. I was excited to share. Like, to me, this is a good tip-off. We got that coming. And there's got to be people out there like, oh, my God, that's the worst thing I've ever heard in my entire life. All right, sorry if that's the case. But to me, that's a good tip-off. Two things primarily on last night. I don't have a lot. It's really the exact same as our victories over Portland and over San Antonio. We just flipped the sides of the equation. If you're Portland, you're San Antonio, you're walking out, you're like, come on, guys, you've got to play every night. The guys in this league are good enough to beat you, and we're better than they are, but they got ahead, they got the momentum, and we didn't stop it. Now it's a little different because the Jazz led that game by 9 going to the third and then shut down, and this is not new. The next step really for Quinn's group offensively is productivity in the final 5 minutes of a game. The Jazz are really not good in the final 5 minutes of a game right now. And I could probably try to run some metrics and see, how bad it is. But if I were to just give you some basic numbers on this in clutch, which is the final 5 minutes of a game, with final 5 minutes of a game with within 5 points, the Jazz are shooting 35.3%, which is tied with the Charlotte Hornets for the second worst in the NBA. I'd like to use effective field goal percentage. I don't have it. I'll see if I can get it. The 3-point shooting were the worst in the NBA. A little less good than Charlotte. Detroit, who's the worst in the league. So effective field goal percentage in the final 5 minutes of a game, there's a real chance, I'm going to see if I can find it here, that we might be the worst team in the NBA shooting in the final 5 minutes of a close game. And that's kind of what happened last night. I mean, we went another 5 or 6 minutes without a field goal and just don't have that aspect. So that's somewhere where we're going to have to get. We're not. Charlotte is a little less good than we are. We're at 38.6% effective field goal percentage in the clutch. Charlotte is 37.6. I just pulled that up as we were speaking. Atlanta is the best at 54.5, followed by Dallas 53, Phoenix 52, Houston 51, Memphis 50. It's interesting on Memphis because that's a question about them whether they can play down the stretch. Cleveland, San Antonio, Orlando surprisingly good, Minnesota surprisingly good, Washington. We're not there. We in the final 5 minutes of a game we struggle. It's a tough one for us. What's interesting to me, my observation is that we just slow down. Fast break points doesn't back up that fact, by the way. I looked at it and it doesn't back up that fact. Our fast break points are actually like the third most of any team in the NBA. So I don't have an answer for you on why this happens. That was my whole theory. Was the other thought I had was second chance points is something that we truly rely on, and maybe we don't get them, but that didn't really show either. I don't know what the reasons. Maybe we're just not used to it. Maybe we don't have the individual personnel. Maybe we're not comfortable with our offense and how to read it. I don't have a good fundamental answer for you on what's going on with that, but it's a fact. We are also, by the way, the third worst free throw shooting team in the final 5 minutes of a close game, which should surprise no one the way we're shooting free throws. The Spurs are worse, though. The Spurs are shooting 69% in the final 5 minutes. So that's the first takeaway I have. Is this? It's a season-long issue. It's who we are. We're not there yet. As we get excited about the steps, that's a high-level detail that we've got to take care of. The second thing that last night, we got bad point guard play again. Trey and Dante had bad nights. Against San Antonio and Portland, we got great point guard play. I don't want to simplify where we are as a franchise, but point guard play is pretty important to us. And we kind of go as we get with our point guard play. And last night wasn't particularly good. Dante didn't start the second half, which I was surprised, but he wasn't good. And Quinn, I think, is, really very aware with Dante that he's got this starting job, and Quinn's got a level of, I want focus and energy from you every night. I can deal with all of your mistakes, all your other things, but I want focus and energy from you every night. And I think that's a pretty fair request, frankly. And so when he doesn't get that, we've seen him have a pretty quick hook on Dante. That's my concern over the years always has been when you're playing a young player and you're playing him almost regardless of performance. Well, I get a little nervous of whether or not you then start to teach bad lessons. I really like what we're seeing here with Dante and the way Quinn's dealing with it, which is, okay, you're starting. I'm not sure you earned the starting spot as much as the guy who was starting wasn't playing well enough, and our lineup switched a little bit, and we needed some scoring off the bench. So I'll let you start. You'll continue to start, but I also need you to make sure that you're holding this together a little bit and not taking it for granted or not coming out dead. And anytime he has, that hook's been pretty quick. I think it's worth doing. I mentioned this in postcast last night, and I think it's an interesting thing to look at, and that is how Gordon suddenly disappeared. The minute Trey moved back into the starting group last night, Gordon disappeared. And very small sample size. Is it coincidental? Is there something to it? It's worth kind of keeping an eye on, was my thought. Over the last 15 games, so I went and looked it up. All right, so I saw that, looked it up. Here's the data find. In the last 15 games, Gordon Hayward has been great, right? I mean, Gordon has been per game averaging nearly 20 points a game, 47% from the field, 41% from three, and has been just brilliant. With Dante Exum on the bench and Dante Exum on the floor, over the last 15 games since Exum started, has been almost the exact. Actually, I'll share this with you on the screen. Has been almost the exact same amount of time, and the results have been almost the exact same as well. If you look at it, Gordon with Dante on the bench is shooting 47%, with him on the court is shooting 46%, and since it's really about the same amount of time, we don't need to per minute it, but Gordon's actually not shooting. He's actually shooting more with Dante on the bench than he does with him on the floor, and he's shooting his threes with Dante on the bench are 51%, with Dante on the floor are 29%. So there's really no find here at all. If you look at his shooting, is above the break three with Dante off the floor is at 49%, and with Dante on the floor is at 32%. That's pretty enormous. His finishing at the rim is better with Dante on the court. It's about the same. Dante's not having, Gordon, maybe Trey is able to sink the defense down. I could flip these stats and it would be exactly, just be flipped because there's in those 15 games. So that was my thought last night, that maybe there was something that the minute Trey got back in the lineup that Gordon, as a starter, Gordon disappeared. There's absolutely no statistical merit to that thought at all, but neither of our point guards were very good last night. All right, that I think is tip-off today. It's 30 minutes. It's geeky. It's long. And, there are a few questions that have come in from the loyalists. Although that was a bad loss, do you think this could bring the guys back to earth and slow them, still have a long way to go mentally and keep them? I mean, I guess that's Skylar. Yeah, I guess maybe they got ahead of themselves a little bit. They got a long way to go. Maybe we all got a little ahead of our place. We got a long, long way to go. And, maybe we can get to 35 wins this year, and maybe we can get to 40 wins next year. Tibor Pleiss question from Michael Moore. Where are my Tibor Pleiss notes from the other night? It's a good question. I got asked about Tibor Pleiss. I shared that I had notes about Tibor Pleiss. I said I would tell you about Tibor Pleiss. I had talked to someone around the league about Tibor Pleiss, and then I had a bunch of notes about Tibor Pleiss, and where did I put them? It's a good question. What was the good touch, decent passer? Not finding my Tibor Pleiss notes. Want to be exact on this, and I don't have my notes. That's a bummer. thought he could play in the league as a backup center, not particularly defensive presence, not particularly athletic in the sense of, blocking shots or doing things of that nature. But general feeling was that he could be a backup center in the league. The interesting thing is that Tomic and Pleiss are on the same team. I still think the chances of Tomic coming over are higher than they've ever been. Quinn's a Tomic fan. Tomic is playing well. He's improved greatly. For a long time, there's a question whether you're going to pay him and whether he was actually going to be able to be a rotation big. He's now playing very well and has developed. So I would say that the Tomic possibilities might be higher. Pleiss gets to be interesting on whether he has greater value to you as coming and signing a contract, and you get to look at him. The one problem with that is if you bring him, he doesn't play well, which is a possibility, then and then you have to let him go. You no longer have him as an asset. Sometimes having the rights to a player is a bigger deal than actually having the player, depending how much he's going to be able to contribute at this point. At the end of the game, it looked like they went away from Gordon and Trey, just dribbled the ball until there was like 5 seconds on the clock and then took a bad shot. They've got to get better at how they close games offensively. The statistics I talked about earlier are there. Yeah, they've got to find a way to have enough confidence to get in their stuff, get it going. Quinn's got to understand them. They've got to understand Quinn. It's all part of the learning process. It's not catastrophic. Well, it's catastrophic individually. It's not catastrophic for the future, but it's something they do have to work on. That, my friends, is Tip Off. I hope you like the Geek Fest.